finally, we are talking about Werewolf. I promised in my big old overview video that I would cover each tribe, faction, the same way I cover Mage and Vampire and eventually some other game lines. And the following statements in this video will be wholly unsurprising to anybody that has followed this channel for an extended period of time. I will leave it to you in the comments to figure out exactly why the Silent Striders are my favorite, because that's the subject of today. But before I get into anything else, I do want to start with explaining how exactly I'm going to cover Werewolf in these tribe videos, because it genuinely takes some work. Like I said in my overview, I am not going to wage edition war because I don't care, like, at all. And if you do want to really fight about edition stuff, I don't know, go find another comment section. That's not what this is for. I'm here to deliver fun lore and to give people, like, stuff to use in their games. People run Werewolf 5th edition, so I'm going to talk about it. The problem is Werewolf 5th edition changes some aspects of each of the tribes, and in my opinion, it's the big knock I will give. A lot of the tribes just don't have as much history or meat on their bones, if you're purely going off of W5. So how I'm going to format it is I'm going to be giving you information largely from Werewolf 20th. I just leaned a lot more into the 20th anniversary. I always will specify if I'm pulling from an older edition. And at the end, I'm going to talk about specifically 5th edition, what's been changed, how things have been altered. Some tribes will be significantly more complicated in the edition jump than others, but simply put, the hereditary nature of being a guru isn't a thing anymore, which makes a lot of the cultural roots we're talking about in the history just not a thing anymore in 5th edition. I'll go more into detail at the end, but I'm still of the opinion that there is a way to solve this problem by having the best of both worlds with both editions and both sets of lore. The Silent Striders. The Silent Striders are an interesting tribe because they're way less of the let's gather around and camp type. They're very isolationist and very individualistic. That's not to say they, for some reason, refuse to gather in groups. They do occasionally. They're just way more active in traveling from camp to camp. Their large role is that of the scout, the informant, the forward advanced group. They're the ones who are traveling around the world from camp to camp, basically, just hanging out. They're given information. They are incredibly useful to have come visit, because they usually have very good information, usually bad news, more often than not bad news, because the world sucks. Which is in contrast to their silent part of the Silent Strider's name. They're often seen as very detached, a bit aloof, a bit stoic. However, they have that specific air of the quiet person who talks when it's really necessary. And when they talk, it's always of something worth listening to. So you should pay attention when the Silent Strider peeps up, because he's probably going to tell you some horrific news. Or he already has some intel in the big group assault you're planning. He's about to tell you that it's not going to work because of such and such evidence he procured. You would also think in the age of email, this job has been completely axed, but no, they prefer the old-fashioned way. And also, it doesn't fully state it, but I believe if you rely on Werewolf information, you should try to get it face-to-face, because email sounds like a really nice way for Pentex to hack you. I imagine Pentex owns Gmail. But their history. I will also give Silent Striders the nice little award of being one of 3 tribes that wasn't fully into the Impergium, alongside the Children of Gaia and the Glasswalkers. However, I will state that the actual opposition the Silent Striders brought up, which, yeah, they were one of the first to bring it up, it was less of a morality thing and a lot more pragmatic, because they saw the writing on the wall that, man, when you cull populations of humanity and rule them in, like, fear and an iron paw, turns out each subsequent generation is more anti-werewolf. So the more we do the Impergium, the more emboldened humanity's gonna get to kill us. And they're right. So eventually, they set up their homeland, that being specifically in Egypt, that they hail largely from the Middle East and in Africa. Funnily enough, in Egypt, they were actually kind of chill with the other Pharaoh, because the War of Rage happened and a lot of the Pharaoh actually got completely exterminated. The Silent Striders made some work to tell the Beset, the werecats in the region, and the Makole, the were-crocodiles in the region, They had a bit of a peace treaty. Like, hey, we got our spot, you got yours, we will be completely chill. But there is one aspect that makes me love the Silent Strider history, and that's just how interconnected with other WoD stuff they are. In Egypt, it was a pretty bumpin' place supernaturally. We had mummies, of course, and then one very pivotal vampire, Set. Or as they knew him, Sutek, Set, who created the followers of Set, who would later rename themselves Clan Ministry, the antediluvian that was it like enemy number one, all stemming from the part of Horus. Because Horus was making some real big strides to get rid of this fucking guy ever since he learned about the vampire jihad. For those that don't know, I haven't explained too much about the vampire jihad because it's important, sure, meta plot wise, but like, intentionally the core characters in Vampire don't fully know about it. The Jihad is basically the constant, long-spanning combats and fights and intrigue and plots against the 4th and 5th generation Methuselahs and the 3rd generation Antediluvians. It's a constant fight for dominance, and eventually something that will lead into Gehenna. This is incredibly not important for 5th edition, because Gehenna is not really as prevalent anymore. We did the end of the world plotline, it's already gone. But when Horus figured out exactly what the Jihad was and what the vampires were going to start doing, he created a group known as the Osiran League, which the Osiran League was a group very dedicated to getting rid of vampires in the region and largely taking out Set. They needed him gone, though eventually this would extend to all Canaanites. Now, the members of the Osiran League, we had obviously the Silent Striders, we had Horus's boys, we have the Makole, we had the Beset. We actually have 2 vampire bloodlines, being the Children of Osiris and the Disciples of Anubis. I guess they got the pass for the Canaanite genocide. We have the Cult of Isis, which is not like a mage group, it's more like a bunch of sorcerers, but their key thing is protecting the spell of life and preventing it from getting in the hands of Set. We also have the issue from Changeling the Dreaming, which I'm not a big Changeling the Dreaming knower. I don't really know a lot about it. They're a very wandering storyteller archetype. It's a pretty standard archetype you'll see in WoD. Then we have the Shemsu Heru, which are immortals, basically mummies, and they're mummies because they were best buddies with Horus. Never say nepotism got you nowhere. But this group is dedicated in their fight, though in the history of the region, eventually this would fall apart. Each group had their own issues, but each of these groups are still super dedicated to fucking up vampires. This is another key aspect of the Silent Striders. They fucking hate vampires. Absolutely. It is on sight, especially a Setite. The Silent Striders' actual knowledge of vampire isn't like that extensive, because the key reason they would be against them initially is just that is a very notable servant of the worm. Vampires in general are very worm-tainted, which is why werewolves don't fuck with them. But we can actually hit the history of their specific clan beef with a character known as Shu Horus, who, the only way I can describe him is that he is vampire doomslayer, like unironically. In their fight against the vampires in the Osiran League, Shu Horus killed a fuck ton of vampires. He was also known to be a master in the Silent Striders of both peace and war. In fact, Shu Horus also got a nasty hit on Set. That should be really impressive to you, because Set, the antediluvian, got a good nasty blow from a werewolf. Take that, power scalers, figure that shit out. Though in all actuality, it was more of a trap. Working with the Osiran League and Shu Horus being a really smart guy, he got a trap on Set, and the plan was basically to fuck him up, force him into torpor deep underground. And the trap was sprung, he got a nasty blow in. Also, Set was wounded from basically being hounded on by every single other one of those factions I talked about, so like he wasn't at one hundo. But right before he fully submerged into the ground into torpor, he laid a curse. A curse on Shu Horus and the Silent Striders, banning them from Egypt. They would never again be able to walk their homeland. They would become nomads wandering the earth forever. The exacts of the curse and the specificity isn't really stated. Not really said what will happen if they come back, but magically they are fucked up and they cannot return to Egypt. This is something that really impacted Shu Horus, but eventually he would die. We're not exactly sure how. This is a big reason why the Silent Striders are the way they are, and why they're very dedicated to fucking up Set particularly, because, you know, maybe if they kill him, the curse will go away. After this point, they were all wanderers. They wandered around, they tagged up with different groups in different countries. They hung out with the Mongol Empire for a while. They actually really fucked with Rome because Rome built a road system and that helped out their shit a lot. But they started to serve their role of informants and giving these major warnings of issues coming about. Like, for example, they were the ones who prevented, there was essentially a werewolf black plague known as the Flaying Plague in the 1200s. It was created by a bunch of satanic mages. Probably Nefandi, it just comes from the Dark Ages. A plague where all your flesh boils and falls off of you, and it infects werewolves. Not fun. The whole camp was completely fucked up by this, and the Silent Striders traveled around telling everyone, warning them, and they were able to contain this outbreak. So good on the Silent Striders. Though there's another aspect, another time period I can talk about, that's probably the most impactful to the way the Silent Striders operate. One aspect of the Silent Striders is that they're very spiritually based. They are the archetype in WoD, this is in a lot of other game lines too, of the necromancers who aren't technically necromancers. They're not raising the dead, they're not doing this, they commune with spirits, but they commune with the spirits of the dead instead of a lot of just, nature spirits. Werewolves in general can do a thing called walking sideways. It's a power you can learn that allows you to enter the Umbra. The Silent Striders are one of the absolute rare few who can pierce into the Shadowlands and have chose to do that. It's not for like a lack of trying, the others haven't, it's just that, why would you want to fucking do that, man? They do it, they hang out with some ghosts. They're pretty friendly with wraiths. So they have a special tie to the spiritual. And now we can talk about one specific aspect of this. A prophecy they received, and I'm quoting the book from this, it doesn't exactly give a time period, it essentially says the time of Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad. When he was receiving his angelic visions, there was a werewolf known as Firewalker who received another vision. He received a horrific future projection, Gaia burning and dying. His vision of Gaia dying horribly, but the rest of the Garou didn't really know this, and they kept fighting this useless fight as basically on the corpse of Gaia. And I'll say, before anyone comes at this of like, modern werewolf, I want you to know this prophecy part comes from the tribe book of the Silent Striders, which is revised edition. It came out in 2003. So this is not modern. This is essentially 5th edition just playing on the Silent Striders foreshadowing. I mentioned that because maybe controversial a little bit in the comment section of my last video. I do actually like that plot progression in 5th edition, sue me. I will mention though, because the mention of the Prophet Muhammad might be a little interesting, a little funny. I want to bring up one of my favorite tidbits about the Silent Striders, and it's actually that the Silent Striders are one of the best sources we have of Jesus Christ in WoD. Now, the actual character talking in the Silent Striders tribe book, when he's talking about Jesus, it doesn't fully know what Jesus is supernaturally. WoD does not really claim that there is a true divinity thing. It leans very Christian. That's just because Christianity has a lot of stuff to pull from, and it makes a lot of notes to be like, hey, we're not confirming or denying any religion's 100% true in our setting. But Jesus 100% had some shit to him. And there's no other way I can put this. Jesus Christ had a mile-long AoE worm debuff. The Silent Striders noticed that within a mile of Jesus, worm spirits could not enter, and any that were inside, like if Jesus was wandering through a town and he just walked into the presence of a worm spirit, it would be fucked up, staggered, all slow and sluggish, and have to leave. So some enterprising Silent Striders basically camped the border of the AoE and killed any worm spirit that came across their way, because now they had easy targets. None of this is a joke, it's from the same Silent Striders tribe book. I love it. But anyways, tidbit over. The actual prophecy that Firewalker received was obviously a big fucking deal. This was a long point before Gaia was really threatened and going to die. And obviously this didn't hit the Silent Striders too well. Firewalker specifically fell into Hirano, and they didn't tell any of the other tribes, because obviously this is news that's a little too big to just drop on people. They needed to get the job done, so their hope was to do their absolute best to make sure this prophecy did not come true. I'll, rip the band-aid off, at least before I talk about 5th edition entirely. 5th edition does not address this, at least nothing I've seen yet. Maybe if we get some more extended looks at each of the tribes, we'll see it. But sadly, there wasn't a haha, we were right moment from the Silent Striders. Or I maybe haven't seen it. I'm very, very happy to just take the L on that. If this is untrue, please correct me in the comments if there is a 5th edition source of the Silent Striders talking about the prophecy. But from this prophecy, shit didn't get better, because they were really, really scared about this prophecy, specifically around World War II and 1999, the Week of Nightmares. This was a horrific time period to be alive, because we had just absolutely astronomical amounts of death and horrible acts. And I have a World War II video on WOD, I talk about it all the time. But it's even bigger for a tribe that is aware of the Shadowlands and does hang out there. It sucks. I can see the impacts of all of these events on Wraith, even worse in 1999 when, you know, the Soul Nukes went off and the Maelstrom opened up again and everything was bad. And so they firmly believed in 1999 that, like, this is fucking it, man. This is the apocalypse. It's happening. Though, thankfully speaking, that this didn't fully come to pass, at least when we get to 20th edition, where they were able to recover and they were able to just keep up their work, their hard work of wandering. I imagine just a bit more emboldened by these horrific events going on. Though I will mention, this is one bit that I do point out with the Silent Striders, is there's a lot of talk about them being very spiritual, and they have very spiritual powers. It's just, depending on editions, they just don't have a lot of, like, underworldy powers. Like, for the actual gifts that the Garou receive, it just depends what edition you're talking about. 20th and in 5th edition really leans way heavier in the there's no terrain that can stop me type powers, and, like, I am perfectly stealthy. So if you want to do a stealth build, this is the way. But they get shit like leaving no trace, they get shit like walking on water because terrain just means nothing. Revise has a little bit more. There's one ability I really like in Revised Edition, one gift, known as the Scale of Mott, and what it does is I weigh your heart to see if you're good or bad. I can see the evil sins you've completed. It's just save the, you know, your heart getting eaten by a crocodile. Where I instead believe the Silent Strider would be the one doing the heart eating. That's the bit I will say is, like, there's a lot of setup about their very spiritualness and, like, again, the kind of I'm not a necromancer, but I talk to the dead vibe that I don't think is fully paid off. That's, like, the one sad part I have about them. But I do think their general gifts of, like, stealth build and all that is fun. I love stealth builds. But now we can talk about 5th edition, finally. Now, for 5th edition, all the hereditary shit I talked about, their homeland being Egypt and everything, that is just not mentioned. And they haven't changed, like, too much, though. They're the exact same archetype. It's just the separation of Egypt and the taking away of the antediluvian part of their backstory, which is a change I understand because 5th edition very specifically is trying to draw away from metaplot stuff. It's trying to not be so interconnected because that genuinely is a failure point to, like, people who are trying to get into WoD. I understand. I love the metaplot. I love that interconnectedness. But, like, this is sales metric wise a legitimate reason why Chronicles exists, is because it was really dense to get into this system and it felt like you needed every book to actually play this game. That was a perception a lot of newer people had. I don't believe that's fully warranted, but that is a perception. And I call that out because I am 100% playing into that perception because I talk about WoD so interconnectedly. So the actual thing that cursed the Silent Striders is more considered like a wormbane or a spirit, but it's stated in a way like they have no fucking clue what did it. So it's really easily just answered at your home game of, yeah, it was still Set who did it. It essentially just opens the door to it being a different answer than just an antediluvian vampire. And, like, other than that, there isn't, like, that much of, like, huge changes to the Silent Striders. They're the exact same archetype, the exact same vibe. They still serve the same job. It's just the bit where they don't mention that they were right about Gaia dying. It is enough here that I think, just this is my answer to 5th edition and 20th and how to combine them in a way that works. Because I firmly believe you can have the idea that the Garou is not hereditary while preserving a lot of the old lore, because simply put, like, the tribes still started in a country. They started somewhere and probably started with groups of people in general areas. Because let's just take the Silent Striders an example. In 5th edition, if you are a werewolf, you awaken as a Garou, you can join any tribe, you just have to appeal to a spirit. If you're starting in the Middle East and in Egypt, some guy in, like, Western Europe isn't going to immediately know, oh yeah, there's a werewolf tribe down there. They can still be more interconnected. The tribes, I imagine, are still somewhat aware of each other in these olden days, but, like, we don't have phones, we don't have email, we don't have infrastructure to travel super fast and super easily. So literally, at most, the Silent Striders as a group can originate in the Middle East and in Egypt, spread around, and then people can see, like, I kind of like the vibe of this guy. He's just wandering. I want to do that. I think you can run it as the biggest part of a tribe in the biggest camp, whatever a camp equivalent would be, is from one cultural background, and then there are little offshoots that happen. There are other camps that come around, parties, but, like, you can still be open to be brought into this tribe It's just then, you know, you're entering a culture with like a deep history, a history that you can learn, appreciate, and bring like your future children up into. I don't lay my cards out on the table. I am personally biased in the idea that tabletop should be as open to imagination as possible. So character ideas should be encouraged instead of fully stifled. Not to say every single character concept is worth having if it's going to completely fuck your game up or fuck the world up or anything. Not every character concept works in every system. I believe giving more tools to the GM and player is always a net positive because it is significantly easier for the game to say yes and a GM to say no than the other way around. It doesn't mean this is how you need to run it. It doesn't mean you need to lean fully into what 5th edition did or you want to go back to the old stuff. I think this is a way to solve both problems in my own head. But yeah, that's gonna be it. First and foremost, I want to thank all my channel members who make all these videos possible. Super appreciative. And I want to give a huge shout out to my top tier channel members. That being Eric Sheriff, Megas Cowdrum, Pork Chomp, SSJ Werewolf, and Czar Shadow. Thank you all so much, it means a ton. But yeah, I'll talk about Werewolf, just intermixed. I do like Werewolf a lot, it's just, I have so much in Vampire and I have so much in Mage. I need to finish my Technocracy stuff because I will make a separate compilation just for the Technocracy, don't you worry. But yeah, I got big fun stuff in the works, so like, comment, subscribe, join my membership, do the YouTube things, and see ya.